Okay guys, I've stripped down the steering column. Actually, first time I've ever really stripped down a steering column. It's interesting to see how it all works. It was quite easy. Only really two minor problems was where this bearing goes on. Let's take the bearing out. I had a bit of issues. There's a little circlip that goes into that slot there, and I got the circlip out, which was a little tricky, but I couldn't get past. There was a little ridge around the edge there with the bearing, so I just had to get, well, it was like a burr all the way around where the circlip was, and I'd say that's from where people have been trying to pull a steering wheel off at some stage, including myself during this car's life. So yeah, I just had to get the Dremel in and just work on that, and now it just comes off no problem. The bearing's in good nick. I give it a good clean, spins freely, can't feel any resistance in there. That rubber cover just comes straight off like that. And yeah, I was thinking about getting a new one, but I think I'll give it a miss. I think that bearings doesn't see much work. So the other little trick to getting these apart is the lock. So when the lock sits on, it's got the cover over it like that, so the cover goes over. In order to get this cover off, you got to get the lock out, and all you do, according to my manual, is you turn this around to the on or off position, and from underneath there's a little hole. So it's a screw hole for the cover, but also that hole goes through into the lock itself, and you get it's a 60 thou pin, so just a small pin, 60 thou the book says, and you just push it, and you can then draw the lock out, and it came out quite easy. But yeah, you got to get it in the on or off position, and put a bit of pressure on the pin, and it just pulls straight out. So that was pretty straightforward. I've cleaned up the shaft and everything. This has got a collapsible steering column, so I'm assuming this is a reasonably tight fit, and it's got a hollow, so it slides in the event of an accident. So what I did is I just put some WD-40 down there, give it a good spray, left it overnight, just to make sure that it wasn't seizing up. So if I ever do crash the car, I don't want this bit to spear through me. So yeah, and the tube's collapsible as well. It's got a similar thing. So I put some WD-40 in there, and down in there, if you can just see, there's like another tube, and that must be able to slide with a fair bit of force. I haven't tried it because I don't want to wreck it, but yeah, I put some WD-40 in there and let that sit overnight, just to make sure that when it all goes back together, it performs as it need be. Now the strange thing, for some reason I thought these covers were die cast, sort of like this metal, but they're just plastic. They're really lightweight, because I had in my brain, thinking ahead over the last few weeks, because I was knowing this is coming up, I was going to make these out of carbon. This has a little bit of damage there, but as they're already so light, I don't see any point, and the only way I could really do it is to skin them, which is just adding weight if I want the carbon look. And I don't know, So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint these up, give them a good clean, sand them back, give them a paint. That chunky bit I'll have to try and repair. It is actually at the bottom of the column, so you don't actually really see it, but if you're looking, unless you're looking for it. But yeah, I'm thinking, well, there's no point going with carbon there. This bracket, which holds the column, it is quite heavy, quite beefy, but I thought it's already got these slots cut in for where it bolts on here. If I replicate these slots in here, it shouldn't weaken it because the weak points are already here. So if it's going to shear anywhere, it's going to shear there. So maybe I can lose a little bit of weight there, but we'll see. I was thinking maybe of replicating that in aluminium, but there's a lot more to it. It's got these, where it bolts to the rest of the brackets that mount to the car, it's got these like slides. So in the event of a crash, these will just slide out. It's got some like nylon bushes in there, and they just, so that this thing will just slide out. So yeah, I don't want to mess with that. Same with this. There's a little bit of weight I could lose. I don't want to mess with any of this area here, but these bits don't really perform any function than holding the blinker switch on. So the blinker switch works okay. It's got all its pins and everything, except it's just worn in that little place there, which makes it a little bit notchy, I think. But let's say they're all like that. So yeah, I've already tested the, and I know it worked from memory from the car, is that the canceller, the blinker canceller, works and everything. So yeah, what I am going to do though is I'm going to get rid of this, the steering lock and ignition switch. So that is actually quite heavy. That with the barrel and this bit weighs 1 kilo. So yeah, that's going. I wasn't going to have a key start anyway because of the electrical system I'm running. So yeah, I'm going to put I'll just get the cover, this little cover. I've got a button coming that'll fit in there perfect, and it's just a start stop button. So it actually, from what I gather, it'll start and turn the ignition on and start the engine, and if you push it again, it'll stop the engine. So I might just do that. No steering lock, because people get around those anyway if they really want the car. So I've got a better security system anyway. So yeah, I'll dummy this up and back up after cleaning it all and see where I'm at. Okay, I've dummied the steering column back up, minus the steering lock and the ignition barrel. Like I said, I'm not going to run that. I think, like I said, initially I was going to make these out of carbon, but now I'm thinking, well, I'm going to just repaint them and see how it looks in the car with the dash in, once I get the dash in, because I'm very hesitant of putting too much carbon in there just for looks alone, because it's already got a fair bit. So I don't know, but one thing I don't like, I do like this part, but I don't like this part. I sort of want to keep the original looks, but the dash has got a square cutout here, so you've sort of got to keep this. But one thing I'm thinking about doing is, if I'm going to remake this in carbon, and this piece and that piece, well, these pieces have to remain separate because that piece has got to come off in order to get that piece off. So I've still got to have that separation. But what I thought I could do is make these two pieces one piece and smooth it all out. So it looks sort of standard, but it's not. Just to get this transition. And the other thing I don't like is that this cover finishes halfway down here. I don't know if you can see that. It finishes halfway down here and halfway across here. If I made this one piece, I could just slide it off and on. Now that the steering lock is not in the way, I don't think you could do that if you had the steering lock in there. But anyway, the other thing is the blinker sort of looks a little old-fashioned. So I want to try and stick with the original sort of design, but just freshen things up. So I don't know. I know people do refurb these, but I don't know. Gonna have to think about this one. This is a steering boss off it's an old SAS wheel I had. I must have bought this 20 years ago off eBay for like 20 bucks or something. I'm not going to use the SAS wheel, and I'm not going to use the standard wheel. I think I'm going to use this one, which again I bought off eBay for like 40 bucks, probably. Sorry, 20 years ago. Let me just swap hands so I can get a better shot at this. I've just got to re-drill the hole, drill some holes in there so it bolts to the boss. But this wheel is a standard wheel. Oh. It's not a GT wheel or anything, it's just a standard one. It's the same size, and I'm going to need leverage in this car because it's got no power steering or anything, big wheels, but the dish is almost exactly the same. So where it sticks out, by the time you take into account the boss and the wheel, it comes out at almost exactly the same, the rim comes out almost exactly the same distance. So that's what I'm thinking. And it's a bit old school. It's got a leather covering on it. It does need attention. It's sort of, sorry. As you can see where the stitches come undone. But it's definitely old school. It's been painted, but I think it's aluminium underneath. Now the other thing is, this standard steering wheel weighs just under 3 kilos, I think. I have measured it all. It's like 2.7 or 2.8 kilos. The boss and this wheel weighs 1.4 kilos, so about half the weight. So that's a good saving. With my steering lock, a kilo there and a kilo out of the wheel, I'm pretty happy with the weight savings on this so far. I don't think there's anywhere else I can really save much weight on it without getting into critical areas. But that's still like a good weight saving over the overall. It's probably about 25%. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at. But I'm not going to attempt any changes here until I get it in the car and just see what it looks like with the dash, and see if it's going to be a bit too much making that out of carbon, or it just blends in and it looks okay. So yeah, we'll see how we go. It's not a bad steering wheel actually. I don't know where it come from. It hasn't got a brand name on it. I know it is old though, but everybody goes smaller, so I'm going to go bigger. And I can always change it for the SAS, get the SAS recovered if I want to. But yeah, I'll recover this. The other thing I also thought about doing is I was looking at pictures of the GT interior with the GT steering wheel, and those are good looking steering wheels, you know. I mean, they're what, $1,000 or something now for a refurb one, but they are a good looking steering wheel. And I'm thinking maybe I could put a bit of padding, make up a similar pad, you know, like the GT style pads, but they're like a 3-spoke. This pad that sort of clips on. Maybe I'll make up a pad similar to the GT, but use the styling of that, and have maybe, instead of those metal inserts, maybe have them carbon or something, just for something. I don't want to look at it to look exactly the same, but just slightly different. Anyway, I'll put a bit of thought into it. I'm making myself a hell of a lot of extra work doing that. But anyway, we'll see how we go. So over the last few days, I've been making this piece up. This is the original, the steel bit. It's actually the brace that runs from left to right hand side of the car under the dash. It's got this, goes up over the steering column there. I've made it out of aluminium. This bit, if you can see, it used to be spot welded. I drilled out the spot welds. It used to be spot welded to that bit, the glove box and all that. Now that's got all bog in it and everything, because remember I made all this out of carbon fibre, which is in a previous video. But yeah, so I drilled the spot welds out of that and remade this out of aluminium, and that's the aluminium piece there. I put all the same cutouts. It's the same thickness in aluminium. Made the brackets up. The shape is pretty good, follows it pretty good. I don't think it'll be an issue. And it was a bit of work, but now I did save this steel bit. Sorry, I got a really bad head cold at the moment, so my brain's not functioning properly, and yeah, I'm a bit all over the place. But yeah, this weighed just under 1.5 kilos, that steel brace. Now I've made this aluminium one up, and it weighs 0.5 kilo, so a kilo saving. It's a third of the weight, and it's strong. It's strong enough to do the job. It's not flimsy at all. This is overkill, this brace, and I just didn't think it needed to be that strong. It doesn't, from what I can gather, it doesn't do a lot except hold the dash together and tie it all in, which this bit will be more than capable of. The only thing I might have an issue is where the handbrake bolts onto. I've got the holes there. It may be a little flimsy for that, with the handbrake, where you pull the handbrake on and off, but I'll deal with that later. Now you're wondering, you know, that's a lot of work to save a kilo, but you know, I'm learning to TIG weld, and while my TIG welds aren't the best, practice makes perfect, and I don't mind doing all this stuff to get my TIG welding better, and so I just count it as practice, really. I also made the brackets that bolt onto the A-pillars that hold this together. I remade those out of aluminium, and they're a third of the weight. So yeah, so a lot of messing about and that to save a kilo. I made it out of this box section aluminium, which I picked up at Bunnings. So I just cut it lengthwise, with a jigsaw. Yeah, I'm mad. And it came out really good. It's the same width and everything. It's the same shape. It should work. I haven't bolted it in the car yet. Bolted everything up, but time will tell. So yeah, I think that was a kilo of weight saving. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Okay, I've been writing all my weights down when I take pieces off the car. That's just all for all the dash, all the bits and pieces. Yes, I'm obsessed with weight, but you know what? It all adds up, and I'll show you why. So we'll start with, well, I've just discussed this bit. The pedal bracket, I've carved some weight out of that. It was only about 200 grams, but you know what? And I seriously don't think I've weakened that at all. In fact, I'm very conscious, like I do study the piece to see where the stresses and loads are, and to make sure I'm not taking critical areas out. So, and the other thing is if you think about safety, there's a lot of steel in this dash. And if you were to have a decent accident and this stuff comes spearing into you, you want it to fold up anyway. But I don't think it's seriously compromised at all in terms of weight. This is the bracket that sort of, it's a hanger basically. So the steering column and pedal assembly hang off that. So again, I don't think I've seriously compromised that at all. That's still plenty strong enough. The steering column, I've saved a bit of weight in that bracket there, which I said I would, and here I've drilled a few holes, and internally on a few bits and pieces. So all up, also I haven't messed with the brake pedal too much, just the pad, because I'm going to actually put either an aluminium or a carbon fiber pedal pad on there. Those holes are ready to tap where I want to put them. But yeah, I haven't messed with the brake pedal too much. The clutch, on the other hand, I've gone to town on. And that is still seriously strong. So if the clutch pedal breaks, it doesn't matter. Brake pedal breaks, well, you're in trouble. So I would love to make these out of aluminium, but my skills are not up to it yet. Maybe in the future. But yeah, overall, I've saved a bit of weight over there. I've added it all up. I'll just find my place in the book. Again, sorry for the messing about. So all of that standard weighs about 15 kilos. Just a touch over 15 kilos. And I've got that down to 10.8 kilos. So 4.2 kilos in weight savings, just there. Again, the steering wheel's lighter. Even the Boss, I had a bit of a go at that. Drilled a few holes in the non-critical areas where I don't think it was going to weaken it at all. On the outside, it still looks good. I don't think that's a problem. So I've got a few hundred grams out of there, a few hundred grams out of there, a few hundred grams out of there, a couple of hundred grams out of there, a couple of kilos. Remember, I deleted the ignition steering lock and barrel, which was a kilo itself. Got a few grams out of here, not much at all. The steering wheel, there was another kilo saving. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And I don't know. I know I'm a bit crazy, but it does add up. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to. It's a slow process, but I sort of enjoy this sort of work. Like I said, excuse the head cold. It's been a bit of a drag, I tell you. But yeah, bit by bit, I'm very conscious of where I'm taking weight out. Like I said, in these brackets and everything. If I don't think I'm playing it safe, but I think what I've done is reasonably kosher. I think it stands up. This took most of the work, and it is a lot lighter compared to this big lump. So again, this runs down by your feet. You really don't want to be hitting this shit in an accident. This will bend. This will bend, but it's strong enough to do the job, I think. So time will tell. Like I said, again, brake pedal, didn't mess with that too much, just where the pad's going. The clutch pedal on the other hand, yeah. Steering column, all the safety is still in that. I didn't mess with anything where I thought it was going to compromise safety. But yeah, so a 30% weight saving, or almost a 30% weight saving, is pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Every part of this car will be like this. I've got a lot of other plans to save weight in other areas. Again, going back to using aluminium, carbon fibre, wherever I can. And we'll just see what works out. I mean, you can throw, if you want to stop the car stop better, yeah, you can put bigger brakes on, but that adds more weight. So I'm going to make everything as light as I possibly can. Then I don't have to go crazy with brakes. The suspension's going to work better. I don't need as much power. But once all this is done, those bits can be upgraded when I want to. This is the hard work. This is the really tough stuff, you know, having the dedication to go for all this shit. And I know a lot of people think I'm crazy, but you know, this dash, just for the dash itself, I'm looking at close to 20 kilos I've pulled out of there, I reckon. I'll add it all up once the dash is installed, which brings me to the point, I'm going to start putting this stuff back in the car and getting it all, making sure it all bolts up and everything, because then I've got the wiring to do, which started me on this track. I know probably half a dozen videos ago I was going to start doing the wiring, but then I realized I need the car partially assembled to do the wiring. So once I've got the dash sorted, I'm going to put the wiring in. I might not put the whole dash in because I'm going to need access to work around it. So, and rather than putting it in just to see how it looks and then pulling it out and pulling it in and pulling it out, you risk breaking and damaging stuff. So sorry to waffle on. That's where I'm at. Next video, I'll probably have stuff inside the car. I'm going to actually start working on a few side projects on some carbon stuff, so stay tuned for that. Excuse me. And yeah, thanks for following. If you're stuck with me this long, thanks a lot for following and staying with it. Cheers.
The field goes towards the start, and he's past. Rocky made a bad start and is backing towards Bob Jane on the outside after Colabani 3 times up Mountain Straight. And the Falcon of Cross showing its great power there as it goes out after.
While Moffat battled to catch up, you do feel sorry for the other guy. Sometimes.
How hard have you been that I'm being killed on the straight? The runners are passing me on the straight.
Just been able to do over it.
Well, I would think it would be very difficult for us to win today.
KB they call him, prepared to take over.
Carry the false flag all the way home. He's the only one that's got any opportunity now. I think Moffat's race is run to a certain extent. Murray Carter is not in contention. But on the other hand, in such a short time already, Peter Brock, who's leading this race, is over 1 minute and 17 seconds ahead of John Goss.
John Goss is still carrying the forward flag pretty well. He's quite a way back, but he's well placed to do well if something goes wrong with those two leading cars. This will be a race that John Goss would dearly love to win. He's been trying for 5 years. This is undoubtedly the main race on the Australian Cup. He'd love to knock it.
Banging up under the chassis, so I waited for a break in the traffic and drove across to the right-hand side of Mountain Straight and put that damaged wheel on the grass and drove all the way down on the grass to save it from breaking up.
So he's out now, whilst most of the look, excitement things still happening, cars spinning on the circuit here. There it is, 1 lap to go, 6.2 kilometres. Kevin Bartlett only has to finish now to win the most prized race in all of Australia. A marvellous challenge from Forbes and a tremendously well-judged, well-driven, well-prepared Kevin Bartlett, who takes the checkered flag to win the 1954 Hardy Roto 1000 for John Goss.